in this particular case, the Republicans were right.
So you think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No, I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, I'm a fiscal conservative and I'm a social liberal. I'm fiscal with my dollars. I ain't apologizing for not wanting to pay high taxes to anybody. I'm not apologizing for that, right? But outside of that, I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay?
Stephen A. Smith delivers a blistering takedown of Sonny Holen for endorsing the very brand of wokeness many say cost the DNC the election. He argues, and many observers agree, that the party's shift toward more socialist-leaning ideas was a decisive factor in last year's defeat. Meanwhile, figures like Holen remained steadfastly unconvinced, insisting that the ideological overreach voters rejected had nothing to do with their loss. Hostin likewise refuses to link their setbacks to being woke. Tune in as Stephen A. Smith methodically dissects those claims and connects the dots, showing how, in his view, Harris's political collapse was driven by an obsessive focus on woke politics.
I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay? But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that.
That's less than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
but you know what? Add Eric during the NFL.
But see, but I think that's where the mistake is made.
Yeah,
you're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you. Yeah. But most of the voters out there don't think like that.
But that means they don't have the information.
Okay, but 90% of the voters don't have the information.
It still amazes me that so many people don't understand the real reason Kamala Harris and the DNC lost the election. Their biggest problem was a constant push to appear awake to every new idea, even when many families felt unheard. Parents often felt that their worries were brushed aside as if their feelings didn't matter. For example, many families grew uncomfortable when their daughters had to share certain spaces with people who were biologically male, and they struggled to understand why their concerns were being ignored. Instead of talking things through, party leaders insisted that everyone should accept these changes without question. The same thing happened in sports, where families felt it was unfair for girls to compete against biological males who had clear physical advantages. These weren't rare or extreme complaints, they were everyday frustrations in ordinary homes across the country. But instead of pausing to listen, the DNC doubled down and accused anyone who disagreed of having bad intentions or lacking understanding. That attitude pushed voters away in a big way. People want their schools, homes, and sports to feel fair and balanced, not shaped by strong ideologies. Families are looking for leaders who value common sense, fairness, and the basic facts about how people's bodies work, rather than treating major changes as moral lessons everyone must follow.
If you're out there busting your tail to make ends meet and to pay your bills, and you're going to work every day, and you got a family to take care of, and you're in New York City, you're getting stuck 2 hours of your day, you're stuck in traffic. You understand? You got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. You don't have time to know what you and I know.
Maybe you need to listen to the news when you're in traffic.
Well, again, I agree with that.
Not be uninformed.
Or you listen to stuff that's going to take you away from the things that brings down your spirit. And that's unfortunately what most voters are doing.
Most Americans are so wrapped up in their everyday responsibilities that they simply don't have the time to study every political topic or new law that comes along. They're not sitting around reading endless reports, scanning stacks of data, or listening to experts argue over complicated ideas that rarely solve real problems. They're working long hours, managing bills, caring for their families, and trying to keep up with life. Because of that, people naturally push back against anything that feels confusing or unrelated to the challenges they face, and honestly, it's hard to blame them. The average person has never made cultural debates or identity-focused arguments their top priority. Their main concerns are much simpler: staying financially steady, keeping their families safe, and being able to afford what they need. They're worried about rising costs. Rent, food, fuel, and healthcare continue to stretch their budgets. Safe neighborhoods, stable jobs, and homes they can actually afford mean far more to them than long speeches about technical theories, pronoun discussions, or complex ideas being taught in classrooms. In the end, their voting decisions are shaped by what affects their wallets and their daily lives, not by political trends or abstract arguments. practical thinking will always connect with them more than any form of ideology, especially when their future depends on it.
Because you were inserted, even though you were the vice president and it was the Biden-Harris administration. Talking about those on the left, just independents, who said, wait a minute, she didn't experience a primary either. And the last time we saw her in a primary was 4 years ago, and she didn't even make it to Iowa. They used that as an excuse to point to her level of inexperience. Then you got the war in Russia and Ukraine, you got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Hamas and Hezbollah and all of that stuff, and you had Trump using codes. Look, do you want her? Where is she? Where's the interviews? Where's she showing herself? Where's the tough questions? Where's the interrogation? And he leaned on certain things.
In this moment, Stephen A. Smith isn't just calling out Kayla Harris, he's taking aim at the larger problems that pushed her political career to the edge. With direct, unmistakable honesty, he breaks down why she struggled to win genuine support. Even during her time as vice president, Harris never connected with many voters. From the beginning, people felt she was presented to them rather than truly chosen. And once her policies shifted heavily toward woke ideas, the frustration only deepened. According to Smith, this change pushed everyday Americans away. They were tired of feeling like complicated political theories were being placed above real-life solutions, but he doesn't stop there. Smith also points out how often Harris avoided tough interviews, the kind of straightforward conversations that reveal whether a leader has strength, confidence, and solid knowledge. Instead of stepping forward and showing she could handle pressure, Harris repeatedly sidestepped difficult questions. That pattern made existing doubts about her readiness and capability even stronger. In the end, Smith explains why so many voters turned against her. She never gained the public's trust, she wasn't tested when it counted, and her own overconfidence ultimately became her biggest obstacle.
Does everybody remember he originally said he was just going to do it for 4 years?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I brought up.
Right. And did you think that once you know who stepped in, he said, well, there's nobody, we don't have anybody?
Well, the point is that
right.
It's not about who you're going up against when you know you're not what you used to be. And see, this is where covering sports puts me at a distinct advantage. I cover people every day where it's time for you to go, but you're holding on and you don't want to leave. People who cover the world of sports are accustomed to seeing that all the time. You are the left, you leaned, and you were a prisoner to the extreme left in a lot of people's eyes. Well, guess what? Most of America doesn't operate on the fringes. Whether you're left or you're right, you're relatively centrist.
Stephen A. Smith sums it up better than anyone. He explains how the woke squad, the most extreme wing of the Democratic Party, gradually gained influence and threw the party off balance. Instead of speaking up or setting clear boundaries, the more traditional members of the party stayed silent, and that silence, Smith suggests, spoke louder than anything they could have said. To many people, it looked as if the entire party had started following the most intense voices, repeating ideas and phrases that felt unusual, overly divisive, or even unsafe. By not separating themselves from those views, Democrats unintentionally sent the message that their entire identity revolved around being woke. After the election loss, some of the same individuals who once supported these ideas suddenly backed away, insisting they had never embraced them so strongly. But by then, the damage was already done. Voters had formed their impression. The left had traded everyday common sense for attention-grabbing ideological performances. Smith points out that pretending everything is fine after a loss isn't a strategy. By the time the denial shows up, it's too late, and it reveals just how disconnected the party had become from the people it needed to reach.
The problem is those on the fringes continuously push for you to get everything you want.
Yeah.
They're not about getting things done. They're about getting their way. And if they're not going to get their way, they're about complaining and griping about it, because they understand that when you are operating based off of grievance, that's usually what provokes you to get to the polls. And that is why they don't mind feeling aggrieved and displaying and disseminating that kind of message, because they know people are going to gravitate to that. And as a result, that might get them to the polls, you thinking you're going to get what you want as a result of it.
Kamala Harris faced a tough crossroads once the most energized part of the left fully pulled her into their orbit. If she didn't follow their strict expectations, she risked being pushed out of her own party. And as many predicted, she gave in without much resistance. This wasn't shocking. After all, the party's most intense faction has a reputation for doing whatever it takes to push its agenda forward. They aren't known for winning people over through calm conversations or thoughtful discussions. Instead, they often apply heavy pressure, expecting everyone to agree without question. Anyone who speaks up is quickly labeled as disloyal or treated as if they've done something wrong. Wanting to protect her career, her image, and everything she had built, Harris aligned herself with this group, believing their approval would shield her from criticism. But by letting herself be pulled deeper and deeper into their strict viewpoint, she pushed many everyday Americans away. Instead of improving her standing, she made it harder for people to trust her. Voters noticed the constant catering to one side and rejected it strongly. In the end, she didn't simply take a misstep. She became yet another public figure brought down by the very style of politics she chose to embrace.
Do you think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No, I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay?
Yeah.
But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that.
No segment feels complete without Sunny Hostin's trademark flair, and she certainly delivered this time. As usual, she twisted Stephen Smith's comments into something he never actually said. At no point did Smith claim that the Republican Party was some kind of fringe group. By creating that distraction, Sunny managed to steer the conversation away from his real point. Smith's message was actually very straightforward. He explained that the most energized woke voices had taken charge of the Democratic Party, guiding it with strong cultural positions and policies that pushed everyday Americans away. Instead of challenging those ideas, Democratic leaders let this group define the party's identity. Republicans, Smith argued, weren't being labeled as extreme. He simply noted that they stepped into the leadership space that Democrats left empty. They became the ones pushing back against the cultural shifts the left had embraced. Sunny's interpretation didn't weaken his argument at all. In fact, without meaning to, she ended up proving exactly what Smith was talking about.
So Howard Stern says that he wasn't confident that the country was ready to elect the first female president because he knows, quote, how men talk behind closed doors about us. So we're very privileged to have a great guy here today.
Yeah.
Tell her, what do men say about us behind closed doors?
Well, first of all,
Say it to our faces.
Yeah, do tell.
I don't hide, so no worries there. Here's the deal. I respectfully disagree with Howard Stern, only from the standpoint that I wish he had been more specific. Why don't you say white men? Because let me tell you something about black men. We love our mamas.
I know that.
We love.
I honestly believe America has to move past the idea that leadership should be awarded based on gender alone. Representation matters, and seeing women in positions of influence is incredibly important. But when choosing a president, identity can't be the only factor we consider. Our country is facing real challenges: an uncertain economy, concerns about border security, rising healthcare costs, higher crime rates, and increased competition around the world. These issues can't be fixed with symbolic choices or empty promises. They demand leaders who are skilled, steady, and focused on real results. Instead of looking only at gender, we should look at a candidate's vision, their decision-making ability, and their history of delivering meaningful progress. Women who aim for the highest office should show the determination, intelligence, discipline, and strength required for such a demanding role. If the right woman steps forward, America will absolutely support her. But that support has to be earned through character and capability, not granted as a simple celebration of identity. The Democratic Party didn't struggle because Americans rejected women or resisted progress. The problem was that some leaders relied too heavily on attention-getting identity politics while failing to address everyday concerns like jobs, safety, and rising costs. Many voters felt the party drifted toward ideas that didn't match their priorities, and they saw leaders who lacked confidence, clarity, or connection to the people they claimed to represent. Stephen A. Smith highlighted this clearly. The party's most intense woke voices began to steer the direction, and many leaders didn't push back. That choice ultimately hurt them at the polls. America is fully ready for a woman president, but the person chosen should be someone who brings strength, skill, and a clear vision. not someone selected for symbolic reasons. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.